Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to It's Obvious Gaming. My name is Garrett Drake. I'm joined online by Preston Pugh. We are finally talking about The Last of Us Part 2. Just packed full of spoilers, completely uninhibited, not worrying about embargoes or, of course, spoilers are really ruining it for anyone. I'm sure many people listening to this, if you have not or have played the game, know much of what's going on in this game anyway. But we are here to talk about our thoughts overall. We're just going to cover, characters, the narrative, themes, gameplay, everything. We don't really have much of a structure. We're just going to enjoy the conversation and see where it goes. I mean, Preston and I have talked off camera about this game a million times, so it'll be interesting to see what new points we bring up, feeling like we're not having to hide anything or prevent things from spilling out that people haven't experienced yet. So I'm excited, Preston. It's great to see you again. This is being plugged into episode 238 of the It's Obvious podcast on our podcast feed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Play. And the standalone review in and of itself, the video version, is also available on YouTube if you'd rather just jump into the review. You're probably watching it here on YouTube now. Maybe you're listening to the end of the podcast. Either way, grateful you're here, and we'd love to hear your thoughts as well, in addition to our conversation. So all that being said, Preston, I want you to just take the floor. The floor is yours. Just however you want to start this discussion, I'm following your lead.
The big premise of the game, and the thing that this game is completely dependent on you coming around to like Abby. That's essentially if you don't connect with her, feel anything for her really. I don't know if this game's story is going to work for you. So obviously the game sets it up as, they want you to hate Abby, and then the big switch at the middle where Abby and Ellie meet at the theater. She's got Tommy down on the ground. She's killed Jesse. Ellie surrenders, and we switch over to see Abby's side of the story. I guess I want to know your emotions on how just Ellie's series of events leading up to that point. Like, what were your thoughts of Abby? Because having read the leaks, I knew Abby was going to be a big part of the game, and I don't think you knew as much, because I would always ask you about Abby, and you'd be like, I don't know anything about her. Like, I don't care about her and stuff, which makes sense, because during Ellie's the first half of the game, you really just hear about what Abby's doing. And so yeah, I'm interested in kind of hearing how them introducing her in the way that they did, how you felt about that, and just what events transpired to allow you to come to like Abby. And I believe you told me she's like your favorite character in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I really, really like Abby. I guess she's one of my favorite characters in the game, because I've always liked Ellie, but I haven't liked her on a level of other people. I mainly liked Joel. I guess that's primarily just because we played as him in the first game, and I kind of thought of Ellie as just a character that I would, I wanted to protect and stuff, which I think was the entire part of the first game. And I think in our other Last of Us discussions, I know some people had trouble with taking out the doctor, or they wanted a choice at the end of the first game, whereas I did not. Like, the second I got into that room, I didn't even think about it. I killed every doctor in there. And I like to know that I know that, like, if Joel were a real person, we would have been on the same wavelength there, because knowing at the end of the game, Joel tells Ellie that if he could have the opportunity to do it all over again, he would do it, in a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we're getting off tangent, because I'll leave that point there towards the end, because right now I want to talk about the transition to Abby. But I think that's just something very important to talk about, and I don't know if I can bring as good of a take on it as you can because I had it spoiled for me. So the entire like I kind of knew going into it that what they were going to try and do in terms of manipulating me to hate her and then kind of show her my side of the story because I knew that was coming, you know. So I'm kind of more interested in hearing, your opinion on it, and like your feelings as they changed playing the game.
Yeah, so I knew that Joel died was the only spoiler I was aware of. I just didn't know where he died in the story, and I think you had sort of mentioned it to me that Abby was playable, but I also didn't know to the extent what she was playable. I thought it may have just been like a segment. I thought Joel may have died later on in the story. I wasn't sure, so I went into it relatively fresh in spite of knowing those two things. So I it's interesting too because I didn't even think about the idea of playing as Abby after the beginning of the game and after Joel's death. I thought it was just one of those like, oh, you're playing as someone who's hunting down Joel. It's like, oh, this is kind of interesting. I thought that would have been it.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about the fact that you would play more than half of the game as Abby. But yeah, Joel's death was, of course, it was not a surprise to me in the sense that I knew it was coming, but I knew it was happening the moment Abby and Joel meet. I was like, oh wow, this is definitely going to happen like any minute, and I could tell too because that cold like room they're in and that garage or whatever. Just even in the spoiler, I just felt like cold to me, like winter. So it's like as soon as I saw there was snow and he meets Abby, I'm like, she's probably going to kill him in the next 10 minutes. She does, and I think it was that's the thing is that it was spoiled for me. So even like watching the scene, I actually didn't feel much when they killed Joel because I already knew it was coming. I had accepted a month prior that he was going to die in a very very horrific, violent way. So watching the scene didn't really affect me, in spite of how tremendous the performances are across the board. Especially Ashley Johnson in that scene is insanely good.
Yeah.
But what I love about that scene is the two perspectives you get, because initially you're seeing it all from Ellie's perspective, and clearly all of these people in that room just seem like total evil bastards, especially Abby, because her back's turned to Ellie for the majority of the scene, and she just mercilessly beats Joel. So that scene ends, and you're like, dang, that was hardcore. And we'll talk about all the details leading up to the other stuff before the turn and everything. But what I love is when they show that scene again from Abby's perspective, and it's you analyze it differently too after you get to know Abby a bit and you see some of her flashbacks, and then they show that scene again when you first cross over. Is she was conflicted through that whole scenario, even when she's like after she shotguns him in the leg, you can already tell she's like a little uneasy about it, because I think someone on a podcast I listened to made a great point. Like these people had like hyped Joel up to be like the boogeyman essentially. So when they finally get him, it reminds me of the Joker in Dark Knight when he's like, I'm like a dog chasing a car, like I wouldn't know what to do if I caught it. Like it's almost like they finally get what they were looking for, and even in the moment, even though she is killing him, you can tell she's a little uneasy about it. And it was clarified when Neil Druckmann said in one of his interviews that that's the reason they hired Laura Bailey, is because she brought sort of that conflicted nature to the character, more so than just like I'm pissed, I'm gonna kill you. It was more of like I have a good heart in me somewhere, but the act that took my father's life and traumatized me led me on this path of vengeance that I have to fulfill. And that's what fascinates me about Abby's character. And there are many, many layers to Abby we'll unpack. But what fascinates me about her is that she gets what she wanted and then is still unfulfilled and broken in spite of getting what she wanted. And that's what I love is like the two sides of the same coin, where Abby's on a path of redemption and Ellie's on the path of vengeance that Abby's already been on. They just are totally unaware of that. And there are a million themes and parallels, even like in the world and other characters, where they just totally align, and it's like beautifully executed. But I love when they show that scene again from Abby's perspective. You can tell that when they're like, okay, we got to get out of here. Like, don't kill the other girl. Like, let's just go. You can tell she's kind of like, okay, I killed the guy, but like, I still feel the same. And that's what I loved about her character. And I've mentioned this on the podcast on our non-spoiler talks, but the reason why I connected with Abby so well is because her whole story in this game is very, what's the word I'm looking for? Allegorical to like experiences I have had in my life, even in the last year of my life, especially like the path to redemption after you've done something that you're like totally upset about and you knew it was a bad decision. And of course, what I'm talking about is not nearly as bloody and brutal and as dramatic as this game, but in a very subtle sense, I've experienced what she has, where I've been in situations where I've been a part of something that was not a good idea, and it was hurtful to me, and it hurt other people as well. And to know that like you've caused something like that is hard to bear and then like really overcome. And so I can relate to the path of redemption, knowing like, okay, I've made this horrible choice, and now like I gotta find my place in the world again, essentially. And it's different for me because I'm a Christian, which I won't go too deep in on this podcast. I'll talk about it at some point, but in that sense, I can relate to the path to redemption. And one scene in particular that I have literally lived almost to a T, is when Abby or Mel confronts Abby in the aquarium after they get back from rescue, or before they leave to find Lev. And Mel says something along the lines of, or Abby says something like, "I'm just trying to something something," and Mel's like, "No, you're a piece of shit, Abby. Like if you want to do right by those kids, like blah 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 blah." I can totally relate to having a conversation just like that when Abby knows like she's made horrible decisions and a lot of people have been hurt because of her actions. She's still trying to do the right thing, and like that's where she finds this connection with Lev and Yara as like her path to redemption of like, I've really screwed over all my friends. A lot of my friends have been killed because of me. This is like my new path to like start again. I've been in that conversation before, so I felt that scene. I'm trying to like I'm almost scatterbrained because there's so much to the game, but those are two big aspects as to why I like Abby, is because I could just connect with her emotionally very well. And that's what's wild to me too about the ending, when all of her friends die as a result of her actions. Everyone she drugged to Jackson winds up dead because of her. Um, and of course, she finally has that glimmer of hope when she gets in contact with the Fireflies, and then they get kidnapped or enslaved by the Rattlers. And then you find her, which is really probably the most disturbing moment of the game for me, when you find like Abby, like the shell of who she once was, pinned up on that post. It's like, dang, like after all she's been through, she winds up like this. Um, I had believed even before that she deserved to live in spite of what she had done to Joel. And I'm glad that Ellie, I mentioned that in a video I did too. I'm glad that Ellie felt the same just based on her experiences and everything that had happened. But yeah, I'm still scatterbrained about it because there's literally so much to unpack from every single character and theme and storyline. But those are like my general thoughts. But that's why I connected with Abby, because emotionally I could sense what she was going through, and I'd related to it in some ways.
Yeah.
But that's why I love the flip. When I first started as Abby, it's like, oh, we'll just see a flashback and we'll be back to the theater. I was totally unaware that I'd be playing for like 10, 12 hours as Abby, which I really enjoyed, because you really do get to know her character, her personality, and you see all these flashbacks that are just totally heartbreaking, because after the death of her father, her relationships are already straining because she's already hell bent on finding Joel and exacting her vengeance. And that's what broke my heart in the scene specifically with Owen when they go to the aquarium for the first time, where they clearly have feelings for each other, and she has feelings for him, but she's still so hell bent on finding Joel that like she always brings it up, and you can see over time that it's straining their relationship. And that's why he obviously ends up with Mel, winds up almost having a child with Witcher, which is another sad aspect. But and Abby's like upset about that at the beginning of the game. That's what I love, is that in that moment you're confused as to why she cares so much, and you don't know anything about these people. But that's what I love about this game, is just like the story structure of just reveal, reveal, reveal. And many strong stories and engaging stories have to do with reveal, especially visual reveal, not necessarily through exposition or anything, but just the reveal that she and Owen once had a stronger relationship and should have been together. But because of her obsession, and obsession is a big theme of the game, it strained her relationships for a long time. And that's another thing that I think is awesome, is that her like this monster mentality that people had kind of built up for Abby is like really reflected in her physique, because she dedicated herself to becoming a total war machine to face Joel at some point, and was like obsessed with just becoming this beast. And that's what I like about it. I thought one of those badass scenes in the game is when she escapes being hung with Lev and Yara and starts and kills the Seraphite and starts beating down all those stalkers in the woods. That scene is so gnarly, and that's what's funny. A lot of people say, "Oh, I started liking Abby at the Skybridge part," which that part's awesome too. And that was definitely like I knew for sure then, but I knew I liked Abby when she got out of that tree and started kicking ass with a hammer. I was like, Abby is so awesome. So that's one of my favorite scenes in the game. But those are just a few reasons until like we generate more discussion as to why I like Abby so much. But that's what's sad is that you can see like even before the death of her father, she really had like a good heart. Like she was a lot like Abby before the death of her father, and that event set her on this warpath where she just became this killing machine and got dragged into WLF again. There's so much to talk about, but those are my initial thoughts on Abby. That's like small like Spark Notes version as to why I like her. But
Yeah.
I liked the Switch, and the more I played, initially I was kind of bummed because when we get to gameplay, I'll mention my gripes with gameplay. But when I first got there, it's like, okay, I'll only be doing this for half an hour, maybe. They're just trying to tell me a story. We'll be back to the theater because I obviously that climax is so intense. You're like, holy crap, what's going to happen? Then you play 10 hours as Abby before you get back there. It was a little frustrating at first, but after all was said and done, I really appreciated it because in the culmination of that scene, and I say this in my video I did for COG, I was so conflicted because I love Abby, not Abby, well, Abby too, but Ellie so much. And part of me wanted to see her win the fight and go home with Dina and live happily ever after. And then part of me was like, I totally understand if Abby kills Ellie because she's been through a lot of hell because of Ellie's actions and because of Joel. So that scene
Yeah.
was just so emotionally conflicting for me.
Yeah, I think that's why this game is so divisive, is because um that moment like completely depends on your feelings on Abby. If the game did not make you feel convict or like conflicted in that moment, then it just completely falls
Falls
flat.
flat. Hmm.
Yeah, because it's like there if you go up until the theater where both the the end of Ellie's uh part in Seattle comes and the end of Abby's part in Seattle comes together where they meet in the theater, and you still hate Abby and are just 100% on Ellie's side, and then the game's telling you, all right, well now go after Ellie and just beat the absolute crap out of her and Dina.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's just a lot to like take in and to like begrudgingly do, if you want to continue past, the game. So you know, I I like you, I felt, super conflicted because I mean, honestly at that point, I just because I'd been in Abby's shoes for such a long time, and I, like you said, through her flashbacks, kind of saw what she went through. I um her path to redemption through trying to like um right her wrongs and stuff by helping out Yara and Lev. I grew to really really like her, and I through that I almost just was slightly pulling a little more for Abby than Ellie. I mean, of course, I don't want either of them to die, but like you said, it's just such a and I think that's what the game does so good, is that it just lives in the shade of gray, and it's just like there's this is such a cliche at this point. Everybody said like there's no good guys and no bad guys, but it's typically like when you play a video game, you just associate whoever you're playing with, as the guy that whose side that you're on. Of course, there's
Hmm.
RPGs where you
As the
can play like
protagonist, naturally.
evil characters and stuff, but I'm
Yeah.
I'm talking about like mainly like single player games and stuff. Because like even Joel in the first game, like he was not a good guy, but like we've seen the good things that he can do, and we just kind of view him as the protagonist. So to have like two potential characters that we view as the protagonists going at each other, and they have both like wronged each other at that point. Um, Whereas, Ellie wronged Ellie by killing Joel, and then Ellie wronged Abby by killing everybody.
Hmm.
It's just completely understandable for both of them to be going at each other, and that's why I thought the narrative was great in my opinion, and I thought it was just really ballsy because not everybody's going to feel that way,
Hmm.
and I know a lot of people didn't, and I know that Naughty Dog, knew that that was a risk that they were taking, and I would like to think, regardless of how you feel about it, you can at least appreciate that risk because they definitely were not playing it safe
Oh yeah,
with this
they
game
very
at
easily could
all.
have taken the safe route
Yeah, it
easily.
could have been Joel and Ellie's other adventure, and that would have been great. That would have been fine. But like, I really like that they tried to do something, complicated. Um,
Hmm.
you know, or not complicated, but just like something kind of tried to think outside the box here.
Yeah, it
And like
demands
I
more
said,
from the player too, is which was what I appreciate. It isn't just like a mindless. Not to say like another Joel and Ellie adventure would have been mindless, like a mindless, lazy story by any stretch of the imagination, but it demands more of you, a player. It's like, I mean, it's mature, like beyond the sense of like, oh, it's violent and has sex in it. Like the themes are like very like adult themes that like many adult people have either experienced or can relate to in some sense. And that's why it like really demands more of you to like really think deeply. And that's when, if the story does click with you, and I don't fault anyone for like not liking it by any means. I just really connected with it. And but if you do connect with if the message they're sharing through this story, it really is effective, and that's what I really appreciated about it, is because it's more than just like the first game. Again, complex or simple plot, complex characters. It's very similar here, but the way they unpack the story demands more of you as from you as a player versus just that linear path. I appreciated the flashback aspect. I totally understand when people say it throws off the pacing, and it's right to say that. Like it does throw off the pacing, but in a way that I appreciate. And I'm not trying to excuse the flashbacks because I can understand if they didn't work for people. But what I appreciated is because the game's so heavy and so brutal and violent. Not that I can't handle those things, but for example, you'd play through this gigantic combat and stealth sequence for like 2.5 hours, and then that flashback gives you a chance to not only see a new perspective from these characters or a memory that contributes to the story, but it gives you a break from that like dark grittiness of the world, if even for 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how long the flashback is. And then after that reprieve, you're jumping back into the plot. So that's why I appreciated the flashbacks, for example. But that's what I like about it, is because it's such a bizarre way to tell a story, and something we haven't seen specifically in video games. And I disagree when some people believe that it didn't take full advantage of the medium. I think it beautifully did, because I guess in a TV show, definitely not a movie, you don't have enough time, but in a TV show, you could theoretically tell half a story through half a season of one character and then focus wholeheartedly on another character for the second half of the season and kind of get the same result. But in terms of gameplay meets storytelling in a game, I personally haven't experienced this style of storytelling before. And that's what I loved, is that it's one thing to watch characters on either perspective, then have them culminate in the end, but to play as two different characters is a whole new experience for me. And like you said, it was not the safe route. And I have always, in any medium, especially creative mediums, I have always aligned and felt drawn to the daring and the bold. Like people that are like, people may hate this, but we're going to go for it because we believe in it. And that's what I really, really appreciated about it. Is because, yes, did it subvert my expectations? Of course. But in a way that I can accept and appreciate. Not to compare it to Last Jedi, because I think those discussions are funny. But that's like a whole different discussion for me. But I thought the characters we get at the start of this game, including Joel, including Tom, including Ellie, which we'll all talk about in depth, very much felt like a 4-year progression based on the living situation they were in Jackson. It totally made sense to me as to why Joel had really kind of settled down the tension a bit and this survivor mode, and like lived in this thriving community for 4 years. His guard was a bit down, and he paid the price for it. I believe that these guys who were once hunters, and this insane journey Joel went on with Ellie, after 4 years of thriving in Jackson, your guard would be down a little bit. So I wasn't at all upset by Joel and Tommy being relatively open to meeting these people. I mean, you can even tell Joel in the middle of that room before they kill him that he's kind of already sensing something might be up. But I buy the fact that they would be kind enough to these strangers they just met and fought off a horde with, and be like, hey, if like you guys are just passing through, like stop by town, like fill up. And you got to imagine, even if they come to Jackson, I mean, they have like these walls and guards and like this whole security system. It isn't like they're just inviting him into like an open village. So that didn't
Yeah,
bother me at all. But I'm
yeah,
kind of going
and
on a tangent now.
I think they give context to that as well. I believe when Dina and Ellie first get to Seattle, um, I think they're talking about the WLF shooting on site, and I think they even make a comment like, Jackson would never do that.
Hmm.
And they've even talked about in the very beginning of the game where you're doing like your routes and stuff. If you read some notes, you can see where they've helped out some survivors and stuff. So I think that was definitely a common thing for the people of Jackson to do, is to try and, build an actual civilization again by actually, helping people and stuff. And definitely in the situation that they found Abby in, um I think they definitely let their guard down, but I mean they helped Abby. Abby helped them. Um, I don't really feel like they had a reason at that point to really feel like Abby was that much of a threat. I mean, they just found this girl who's being chased by like an absolute army of
Which I don't know if you knew this. Abby and
infected.
Ellie are the same age in this game.
Yeah, I did know that.
Yeah, they're both 19, which it's like
Yeah.
Joel finding another, I mean, albeit jacked version of Ellie out in the wild.
Hey, she was wearing a jacket, so he didn't even
Yeah.
know. But yeah, like I don't think there was, based on, what I'm assuming their history was in Jackson helping people and stuff, that
Yeah,
probably
for
was
all
just
we know, they
something
could
they
have
were
helped
doing.
like groups of people a year ago, 2 years ago. Like, same thing. They
Yeah,
could have met people in the wilderness. They're like, hey, we need help. They're like, all right, come to
but
Jackson.
even besides that, I mean, they're being chased by a horde. Abby
Mhm.
throws out they have a place that they can go with people. They're out in a blizzard. That's just a safe place to go. And just from, it, once they were inside those gates, if those people wanted Joel or Tommy dead, they were gonna die no matter what. Like
Yeah.
Joel and Tommy were just gonna like whip out like their guns and take on like 12 people and like, get out there alive. So you might as well try and just kind of get out of there by being nice, asking them down to come down to Jackson and stuff for, supplies and stuff. So I really don't. I didn't have a problem with that at all, and I actually didn't even think about anything like that until I started reading that other people had uh opinions on that section of the game.
The one
But
thing I want to throw out about Abby before I forget, another way I connect with her character is I can completely relate to obsessing over something and then finally getting what you obsessed over and thought about forever. And it almost to a T playing out the way you imagined and still feeling the same after you get it. I've lived that. I haven't beat a man's head in with a golf club, but in an allegorical way, I have lived that and totally understand what it's like to obsess over something, get what you wanted after all this time, and then even immediately afterward being like, why did I even like I still feel exactly the same. I can completely relate to that. And that's why I just beat after beat after beat with Abby. I was like, I've been there. I felt that. I've seen that. Like it was crazy. That's why I just grew to like her so much as a character.
yeah,
That's just something I just wanted to throw in there.
for sure. But yeah, to kind of like keep going, and I don't even know where to go from here. I guess just to kind of go off of Abby again. I think the moment I really began to really like dig her character, of course, the
The
scene with
burrito.
the yeah, that exactly. Seeing her wolf down a burrito in 3 bites, we really connected there. But when her and they actually played off her fear of heights, and her and Lev going over the bridge to get to the hospital.
Hmm.
I think that really humanized her, because like you said, it's like we've, even in the part that you're talking about where she takes on all those stalkers and stuff, it's still like um making you get the same vibe from her that she's just like this walking
Killing
machine, this
machine.
just
Yeah.
tank. And then to just kind of like humanize her a little bit, showing that she is absolutely horrified in this moment, and you kind of,
Hmm.
feel a little bit of sympathy for her. That's when I really started to um really really like her character more so than I already did at that point. And also made me really like Lev as well. I like, they're just them playing off each other as
Mhm.
just being two factions, just like absolutely hated each other, to working together, and Lev trying to um, give like moral support to Abby as they like conquer her, or not even conquer, but just like face one of her biggest fears. I thought was just really good, like character bonding moment for both of them. And then gameplay wise, I really enjoyed descending that hotel or whatever. um I really liked that level
Mhm.
design. I thought the stalkers that broke out of the walls scared the crap out of me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
really liked that segment. Um, but yeah, I kind of want to knock out the story first before we start going into any more characters and stuff. But yeah, so um, as sorry, I need to resituate here. Um, the main thing that really sticks out for me, and I think what I wanted to uh talk about in the beginning, but I think I've kind of hit all my points on Abby. But the thing that stuck with me the most about this game was Joel still, and the parts that really like emotionally hit me very hard were the final two flashbacks with him. The first one being in the dance or festival thing that we originally saw at E3, where Ellie and Dina kiss for the first time, and Joel comes in and pushes Seth out of the way, and just seeing Ellie like retaliate against him, because I'm assuming that they are still Ellie is still hung up on Joel because she found out that he lied to him. And I'm assuming it had been like almost an entire year or two of
I think
Ellie just,
it had been 2 years
yeah.
of them kinda being very distant from each other.
Yeah, which is just heartbreaking, dude, because
Mhm.
of course having more context, knowing that even though Joel probably feels like absolute trash because of the way that Ellie has probably treated him the past year or two, he still like wouldn't have changed anything,
Mhm.
even though he knows she would have died on that table, but he still would have saved her, every single time. But the game wants you to believe that that was their last
Interaction before he
interaction,
died.
dude, and that freaking killed me, dude. I felt that I was like that's one of the saddest like moments in any game I've ever played. Like I just I felt so sad at that point. And you go through Santa Barbara with Ellie and Abby, and just as brutal as that fight scene was, and Ellie goes back with her missing fingers and plays what's it called? Forever Days,
Future Days?
Future Days. And when it goes back to Joel, man, I was so, after all just the chaos, and I definitely want you to, I think you can talk uh more in depth about your feelings about the ending. But as it went back to that flashback, just knowing that I was going to get something happy, and I just knew that, knowing that that wasn't their final interaction, that I was going to see one more thing between them, just made me so happy in the moment. And to see that Joel, you know, told her that, and I like to think about that, like in the moment when Joel is being killed by Abby, he still wouldn't have changed anything,
Mhm.
because him, uh, even though his actions led to this very moment, it still led to Ellie still existing. And even though Ellie went through absolute hell, potentially could have lost everything, Ellie's still alive and she still has a life to live. She can still maybe go back to Jackson or find meaning in her life. So Joel's sacrifice of himself to keep her alive, because in the end Joel essentially like killed himself to
Mhm.
save her. His actions ended up coming back to kill him, so therefore, so she could live. He was fine with that. He was, I think that's what's so that kind of just that's what sticks with me is that the game kind of gives you that context that Joel was still fine with his decision, and yeah, that was that's kind of just is what I think of when I think about the ending of the game.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I that's what I love about the continual reveals throughout the story. It's interesting to me, because I know a lot of people wanted another Joel and Ellie, not necessarily adventure, but just another story involving the two of them heavily. And what's interesting is that you really do get to experience what that sequel would have been like if it existed. We go to the museum. They have that lovely day at the museum, one of the best sequences of the game to me. The follow up flashback is them after Ellie does the sniping tutorial with Tommy. Goes throughout that hotel or whatever it is with Joel.
mhm.
That's very similar to the first game. Their
Uh,
relationship also and their relationship progresses with each flashback. That each
dude,
one
and
builds off the last.
I think that there's just a really amazing moment in that flashback where Ellie gets grabbed by that bloater and Joel just goes Super Saiyan and
Mhm.
just takes that thing out with a machete. And I think that just further drives home the point is that like Joel is not letting anything touch Ellie. Like
Mhm.
it's just not going to happen. And I think that as cool as that moment is, like that is what I got that feeling. I was like Ellie has to feel safe because it's just
Yeah.
like
If anything.
Joel. Yeah, exactly.
Um,
So
yeah, and I love that too. With each memory, you're getting that Joel and Ellie experience, but each one gets more somber and more dramatic because you culminate in the third flashback when she confronts him about the lie and he finally tells her the truth.
yeah.
um, that's when their relationship just completely changed. And then for the two following years, they were distant from each other. And that's what I think. That's what I love about each reveal is that with each reveal, his death becomes all the more effective for me. Especially like you mentioned after the dance, and then when you think about the beginning of the game when Joel and or not Joel, Ellie and Dina are on their route when Dean is like, "What are you going to do tonight?" Ellie's like, "Oh, I think I'm going to invite Joel over for a movie night." That was clearly the first time they're going to have a genuine
Yep.
evening just hanging out as surrogate father and daughter for the
Which
first time in years.
I completely forgot about that my
Hmm.
first playthrough because that completely contradicts my feelings of like that was their last interaction. It's just her getting mad because clearly playing through it again and I hear that I'm like, oh well, they must have like had to have talked again for her to want to like go watch a movie with him. But it's like in the moment you like completely don't remember that at all.
But I think the way it ties up is that because that they have that conversation in the following morning, Ellie is going on that route run. So I think Ellie's
Uh huh.
idea of inviting him over for a movie is like, well, I'm going to work on forgiving him, but I'm going to also like ask him to hang out like the night after that conversation. So you could see that even after she'd slept on that conversation, she was all ready to start pursuing that relationship again. So that's what makes it so heart wrenching is that after everything plays out and you see all these reveals and it all kind of ties together at the end. And then, especially when you think about the beginning again, you're like, dang, dude, they were right there about to just be back to going, like being father and daughter again. And then he's gone.
Yeah.
Um, that's what I love about just the dramatic, heavy themes of this game. It's like just the consequences of your actions and just like how all these like empathy and obsession, forgiveness, hate, revenge, like all these different themes playing together is just so intense.
I mean, you really see it like one of like the worst things about the game in terms of like there's no upside to it is Tommy. Just seeing him his downfall of
Insanely
just
tragic.
yeah, like he just his once he gets back from Seattle just absolutely just destroyed like he can't
Like
walk
the cycle
normal.
repeats itself with Tommy because he takes on that obsession at the end of the game. As
Yeah.
Ellie had more or less tried to let it go in spite of the
Yeah.
PTSD. Abby had clearly let it go by the time Ellie confronts her at the end, but Tommy couldn't let go. And you can see, like you said, he literally wears the price of his vengeance physically. And he even mentions like he and his wife were taking time apart, probably done for good because he had not only gone in this warpath and caused all this destruction, but he basically unlocked
Which
the beast again.
yeah, which of course I think it's not like I'm a super sleuth and I'm like I figured out something, but obviously it's more so probably Maria was like, "Screw you, dude! Like you are you're
You're not the
obsessing
man
over
I
this.
married.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And his like, oh, we just decided not to be together is total bullcrap.
Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, that's what's so tragic about him, man, is at the beginning of the game. Like, think of Tommy when he, especially even in the flashback with Ellie, he's like this awesome, kind-hearted, awesome uncle. And then in the room where he even tells Joel's killers, hey, come back to Jackson and restock before you go out. And then contrast him with the end where he's obsessive, he's hateful, he's angry, he's physically beaten down. And when he goes on his path of destruction that you literally bear witness to throughout the stories, you're following the path he's laid before you. You're seeing like the visceral, violent nature of who he once was coming back out again. And he becomes the monster after Joel's death that he was. You hear the stories of Tommy and Joel being hunters back in the day and the things they did that were unspeakable that he'd sort of buried and overcome throughout living in Jackson. And then he just becomes that monster again and physically practically looks like a monster at the end of the game. And that's, I think he has the most tragic story out of anyone in the game because of like his downfall. I mean, everyone has a tragic tale, but Tommy's is really, really sad. I mean, I make a joke about his plot armor in my video. It's more or less, I mean, it's a joke, but it is kind of funny, like everything he goes through and survives. But at the end of the day, I love what he represents of the story is like the ultimate, not really failure is fair to say, but someone who just could not let go. And you're seeing like what that has made him is just so tragic. So, side note, when we talk about gameplay, I know they've already said they're not going to do DLC, but if they were to do any DLC, one option I think it'd be cool that you and I talked about is if you play through the exact same story, but from Tommy's perspective. Like you play
did they
as
say
Tommy
they
throughout the whole game.
did they say they weren't going to do a DLC, or there's no plans at the moment to do DLC?
Maybe they said no plans. I'm not sure what the exact quote is.
That's
I
kind of what
would
I.
love to play that though.
Yeah, no, I would love to see that. I mean, I would more so like to see just a like almost like a Lost Legacy type game of where you play as Joel and Tommy shortly after the outbreak and play as hunters. Even though I don't know if that would go over too well with it's like I know you're really upset about Joel dying, so here's another game about him just being a really bad person
Yeah.
to make you feel better about it.
Yeah.
But I would be interested to see on how we met Tess and stuff, just kind of um what happened before the events of the first game.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, playing as Tommy would be pretty cool. I just don't know story wise what you could really bring to the table with that, because he's by himself a majority of the time and he's just hunting Abby,
Mm-hmm.
and then he eventually finds her and gets shot or gets pushed into the
Pushed
ocean.
into the ocean, gets arrow to the knee, shot in the side of the head.
Yeah.
Everything's
So,
fine here.
Yeah, don't really know how that DLC would end.
Yeah.
But I think another cool one would be either playing as another wolf, or like a wolf and a Seraphite, maybe like two other characters going back and forth between them, or playing as like I've seen Yar and Lev or something like that, just kind of showing their backstory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm all for any DLC they can give us at this point. Let's talk a little more about Ellie and her journey because it's pretty intense, and a lot of things have clicked for me. The more I've thought about it, and this my second playthrough, but
Mm-hmm.
initially, and it's still kind of funny to me is the scene with Nora, and she beats Nora and interrogates her and comes back all upset about it, and I'm like, well, you've just killed hundreds of people to get here very violently and even like verbally mocking them when you kill some of them, and even some guys on their knees begging for their lives and you stab them to death, and even Dean is like, damn, Ellie. But an interesting point someone made is that Ellie is so hateful immediately after the death of Joel that she really is similar to Abby on just this warpath trying to find Abby and doesn't care who stands in her way and will kill anyone that stands in her way. And you can even see that in her animation, her expression when she kills people or like strangles them or stabs them. She is pissed when she kills them. And it's fair to say it. I even mentioned this in my video when I critiqued that story point is all of it could have just built up to this point, and she's finally realizing what she's done just to find Abby is not only has she killed a crap ton of people, dogs, very violently, but she's now interrogated someone and killed them just to get answers. I can see where all that could build up. But then immediately after that, she's back to killing 100 people. So,
Yeah.
like, the contrast between gameplay and storytelling was kind of weird to me in some places, but that's really the only main story point where I felt like the two really conflicted one another. Um, but her journey is pretty fascinating too in many ways. I think the a part I can also relate to with Ellie is when she decides she is going to go hunt for Abby after she's on the farm with Dina and JJ. Um, like, it really broke my heart because I can also relate to feeling like trying to let go of something, but feeling like, well, if I don't, and it kind of ties in again to Abby. And we saw the same thing with Abby. She could not let go until she got what she thought she needed. And same thing happens for Ellie, that cycle where she just cannot rest and suffers from this PTSD until she feels like she gets the vengeance she thinks she needs.
Mm-hmm.
And it broke my heart because I can relate to that exactly, where you think, and part of you is like, okay, I can let this go. I didn't get what I want, but I can let it go. But then giving into that again and her deciding to leave behind this beautiful life with Dina and JJ and go down that path that she knew was wrong, but she just felt like she had to finish what she started. I can also relate to that. And that scene really moved me as well, in like a very sad way.
Yeah, I mean, because that's the thing that just stands out to me. It wasn't just like a. I don't know if it was like I know it was vengeance at that point, but Ellie was so mentally destroyed at that point, like with her PTSD and stuff, that it's like she probably felt like, I mean, that was the only thing she could possibly do
To like
for her.
silence that,
Yeah.
like to
And
try to
that
make it stop.
no matter how, even though, she was in a good place, that maybe the only thing keeping, or I think the only thing keeping her from going was like she literally doesn't know where Abby is. And
Mm-hmm.
then with Tommy bringing it before her, and it's like she can't even, like, she can't pretend that she doesn't know where Abby could potentially be now. So it's
Mm-hmm.
just like she has to,
Yeah.
even though it just ruined. I mean, it could have ruined everything. I mean, we don't know what happens. Would Dina even let Ellie back in her life after that? I mean, how long was Ellie gone?
Yeah, because we know at the very least she was gone for months. At the
Yeah.
very least.
I mean, because you see what happened to. I mean, I think we can only base that on just the way that Abby looks.
And
So
I think you can kind of connect the two too, where the scene in Santa Barbara opens with Abby and Lev, and Lev's already talking about, like, I can't believe you had to trade a handgun just to find this house. So they probably
yeah,
traded it the day before, 2 days before, maybe a few days before.
yeah,
And then Tommy finds out that information shortly thereafter. So we're thinking realistically maybe a few weeks have passed between Abby being captured, then Ellie finding out, and then Ellie seeking them.
yeah.
Months pass by after that, so it's a pretty significant amount of time.
And that's like Dina. As Dina's there with JJ, like Ellie could be dead.
Mm-hmm.
Never knows. Especially if Ellie just leaves. Like,
Yeah.
I guess Dina has to assume that Ellie's just dead.
Mm-hmm.
Um. So I mean, I at least Ellie. I would assume Ellie would at least try and maybe go and
Like, hey, I lived.
fix things. Yeah.
Yeah. I lost 2 fingers, but I lived. Man, I have a lot to say about Santa Barbara too. I don't want to jump ahead to gameplay too much, but something kind of clicked for me in playing through, because I had to capture a lot for the video I did, and I was playing through the majority of Santa Barbara again. And when I first played, I can relate. I felt like the game had drug on too far at this point, because I do enjoy the gameplay, but especially on moderate, it became very monotonous and repetitive to me. So especially after that dramatic story event that occurs, of course, at the theater and then the house, and then you're back playing stealth action gameplay again. I was like, okay, I'm ready for this to be done. And initially, I felt like it dragged on. As much as there are things to like about Santa Barbara, I thought introducing the new faction was pretty cool. It was cool seeing California. So I appreciate those aspects, and of course, the payoff of that whole sequence. But something that clicked for me in the second playthrough that almost works thematically for me is because Ellie already knew that she felt that, I think it's clear that she shouldn't go to Santa Barbara, but she feels like she needs to. And even as the audience, especially if you're connecting with these characters, you feel like, Ellie, like, don't, like, just stay with Dina. Like, you have a good life, just let it go. I think what I appreciate more in my second playthrough about Santa Barbara is that even as a player, it feels wrong. And I think the gameplay, it already feels like you shouldn't be there. And like the tacked on nature of it, and I'm not trying to make an excuse like that, like, oh, like this is the reason why it belongs there. Like it's not an excuse. I almost appreciated it more after connecting with Ellie's feelings because it feels wrong in the story. And then you play it and you're like, this is too much. Like this shouldn't be happening right now. It kind of works for me in that sense.
Yeah, I know
But
what you're saying.
yeah.
That could definitely come off to somebody that like, oh, you're grasping for straws there to make this
Yeah, I already know
negative
someone's going to
aspect of
think
the
that, but
game. Yeah,
if I was defending the game, like I would just be like, no, I like it because it's good. Like I think that's why it kind of works for me. It
yeah.
still does feel long.
I completely understand that, but I think that's probably one of my. And I think I said that in our spoiler-free discussion. Is I do think the gameplay drags on a little bit, especially in that Santa Barbara section. That I was just wanting to. I was just so eager to see how this ended. I thought that the gameplay being as long as it was in that segment was kind of just prolonging things, and I I completely understand that, and once I get to that part on my second playthrough, I might be able to appreciate that a little bit more. But playing through it the first time, it did feel a little long, and like gameplay wise, I actually played differently than I had been playing. Like I was definitely a little more aggressive because I was just
Same.
like, all right, let's get through this.
Yeah.
So I think that maybe gameplay wise could have been shortened up just a wee bit. But
Yeah, there are some cool. I think what I like most about Santa Barbara really is just the cutscenes. Like when Ellie gets caught up in that tree and deals with those two guys, it's a really awesome scene.
Fat
Um,
Geralt.
yeah, and then the revelation too when she gets to the prison and finds these people that have been in these cages. It's kind of like, dang, these people are truly evil. Especially they pinned
Yeah,
up and
these are like the only people in the game that you're like, nah, these guys suck.
they've got
Like
to go. Yeah,
they have.
yeah,
There
they
is
were
no
bad
side.
news.
There is no side of their story that's gonna make me feel better about them.
Exactly. And that's funny too. I mentioned I keep referencing that video, but I shared a lot of my thoughts in that. But it's one thing to see the Seraphites hang people and then gore them. I'm like, man, that's brutal. But then you get to the Rattlers and they imprison, torment, and enslave people is just so bad.
Yeah,
Especially when you find people on that beach, you're like, this is true. I mean, all of it's evil in the game. There's a lot of evil, but that is like the most evil aspect out of all of the factions when you realize that.
yeah,
So, yeah, but I like especially the story beats of Santa Barbara. Of course, the beach sequence at the end and the parallel with, of course, Abby picking up Lev and saying "I've got you" and carrying Lev the same way Joel carried her out of the hospital, like carrying Ellie
yeah,
out of her death sentence. Abby carries Lev out of their death sentence to those boats to escape. It's
yeah,
just that was like a really beautiful parallel to me.
yeah. And I mean, I like that. You know, Ellie didn't kill Abby. I mean, I know it's cliched as it is, but you know, she broke the cycle, and they can just now. I mean, her killing Abby could have just never. Or of course, again, the cycle of violence. Like Lev could have come after Abby or Ellie, getting their names confused. So, you know, I just, I don't know. I wouldn't have felt fulfilled if there was a choice, or if Ellie would have killed Abby, because I think that completely just like defeats the whole point of what they were trying to like say in this game.
Yeah, and I appreciate it too because I think, and this is something that I'm sure many people are already aware of, but especially in film school, that when you like break down like all these films, people say like a character's arc is not satisfying 9 times out of 10, not always, 9 times out of 10, if they don't have a period of growth or a season of growth or like a very true change at the end of a story. And I feel like if Elliot had just exacted her vengeance and called it a day, like it would have been less, in the long run, it would have been less satisfying for me because she just didn't change or grow in any way. It's just not as interesting to me. And I can relate too that like forgiveness, and again, like no one's, God forbid, no one's killed any of my family members with a golf club, but like forgiveness when someone has very deeply hurt you, especially emotionally, is very difficult. And that's what I thought is beautiful about Ellie's story is that she may not forgive Abby, but she's certainly trying and gives Abby that chance to just go and take care of Lev because in similar ways, Abby is saving the life of Lev just the same way Joel saved her. Ellie has lived that on the opposite end with Joel. So I just thought that was beautifully done.
I mean, Ellie ends up. I mean, Ellie saved Lev and Abby.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I
Yeah,
think that's what her entire quest for vengeance actually ends up with her saving both of their lives. If she would have just chilled back at the farm, they'd both be dead.
exactly. And pays the price for that as well, even if it is just like a physical injury. Like that wouldn't have happened had she not gone. And it's another theme that this is a universal known idea, but rarely anything is ever as it seems. And one of my favorite August Burns Red lines is in the song called Coordinates, where he says, "Let go of all you perceive. Nothing is as what it seems." And many songs and movies and books have talked about that idea, but just like we said, like Ellie has no idea where Abby is. She probably just thinks Abby's off living life, being fine, but she finds her in this terrible state. I've lived that as well, where you build this thing or this person up in your mind, and then it's revealed to, and you're like, this is not at all what I expected it to be. That's another thing that can be difficult to grasp is especially when you're obsessing over something, you imagine it a particular way in your mind, and then when you get to it and you find it, you're like, this is not at all what I expected. So that theme, that idea has always resonated with me as well. And we see that when Abby's pinned up as a shell of a human being on that post. You're like, dang, this is not at all what I expected to find. So I appreciated that as well. But it is sad to think about adorable, innocent Ellie from the first game, and then where she ends up at the end of this game is very heavy. But it feels very real, in spite of some of the hiccups in the story. And I critique a couple of the other ones in my video, but more or less, it's a very grounded. It feels real in many ways with the relationships and the characters. And that's why I enjoyed it so much. Not that I want to feel depressed playing through a harrowing story all the time, but the way they executed it, I could relate to in many ways. So I really, really enjoyed it.
For
As
sure.
sad as it is.
Very sad. Definitely one of the saddest games I've played. Probably the saddest game I've ever played, for
Yeah.
sure.
And I know we've talked about this off camera, but I'll briefly restate it. Just the parallel between the happy house and then the somber house. It's that beautiful sequence where Ellie's on the farm with Dina and JJ. It's gorgeous, and you and I even talked about it. Even just graphically, it's breathtaking. You're like, this is such a happy place.
Oh yeah, dude. When she goes and sits out on the tractor with
Tractor.
JJ, it's just like I see some people like 'cause I like to watch streamers play it and see their reactions and stuff, but people are like getting up. I sat there for like such a long time, and people miss one of the best parts of the game when she sings the potato song to JJ.
Yeah.
That part's hilarious. Like so
Yeah.
many people miss it because they just jump out of the tractor so fast.
I know. That's what's heartbreaking is that there's probably many moments people missed out on for that exact reason. But that to me, that was an opportunity to like sit and reflect on a lot of the game before you play out the rest. You're like thinking about, wow, but think about everything that's happened that's led to this moment. And I foolishly believed, I'm like, man, are they really going to end this happily? Of course not. But that's what's so heartbreaking is that she comes back to the house and it's gray. It's a cloudy day. Gets into the house and like I've said before, I believe the empty house reflects her emptiness inside and everything she's lost. There's nothing left in that house. And of course, when she picks up Joel's guitar, I mean it's her guitar, but the one Joel gave her, and plays the broken melody of Future Days that she can physically no longer play, is just reflective of just like the broken state she's left in after everything she's done. And then of course, leaving the guitar behind, leaving everything that's left in that house behind and going off into a new life and just starting fresh is just beautifully done thematically and symbolically as well. So I really, really liked the ending and just really, really moved me deeply, like as sad as it was. And I like that we see her walk away, and the parallel between the opening shot and the closing shot are identical. And that's a classic storytelling theme as well. You'll notice in many movies, first shots will be very similar to the last shot, just like mirror images of each other and like the growth of characters when it's done effectively. So I love that connection as well. But there is part of me too And I'm glad that we get, of course, Joel's flashback where they reconcile and then she walks away from the guitar. Really, really works for me. But it also been really intense. And I think Tim Getty said this too in the Kind of Funny spoiler cast. If she just played the broken melody and realizes she can't play and just sits there in silence for a second and it just cuts to black and ends. Like that would have been so heavy at that point, especially without Joel's flashback. But in a lot of ways, it ends optimistically with that flashback and then her walking away.
Yeah, I needed Joel's flashback. I needed that.
It would have been way too depressing without it.
Yeah, that made the end. Having that just like I said a while ago, knowing that Joel was 100% fine with everything that happened, just made me feel like just relieved, I guess, if that's a good word for it. So yeah, I definitely needed that.
So before we jump into gameplay, then let's talk about just other characters briefly that we either liked or didn't like.
There's too much to say. I like Owen. I think his chemistry with Abby was good. I liked how he was just kind of carefree, just kind of joked around a bit. I thought he was good. I didn't like Mel. I don't think you were supposed to like Mel though. I don't really think they were like trying to get you to really like her. She just was there kind of at some points, just very mean to Abby as well.
That's what's so tragic too, is that like Owen and Abby could have had this awesome relationship, but like it's mean to say like, oh, like Mel is this fallback or like his rebound girl.
I mean, clearly.
Yeah, it's just really sad because I've like seen that with my own eyes before in real life. Yeah. Like that's just,
and it's like I think that's Mel knows that too.
Yeah, and that's why she hates Abby even more.
Yeah, like if you're going to freaking Santa Barbara, just like screw you, I'm not even coming. Dude, one thing that hit me watching another playthrough, again, which I'm actually skipping the cutscenes, the playthrough I'm on now because I've seen them like 5 times a piece just because I've watched other people play the game after I played it. And one of the past few times I was watching it when Abby and Yara are going to get a boat to go to the Seraphites Island. It just hit me that Abby's last words to Owen were like, "Get your priorities straight."
Yeah,
and she never talked to him again. I was like, man, that's kind of sad.
Yeah, at least Ellie and Joel had one final great conversation, but goodness gracious.
Yeah, that definitely they did not end on the and I guess that's I don't even know what I'm really trying to say. Oh, that's just like a bad aspect of just one of the repercussions, just one of the things that Abby has to live with based on her obsession with killing Joel, is that not only did she lose Owen, but she lost him without really getting to say, goodbye or anything. At least Ellie had her moment with Joel before he left, and Joel was happy that Ellie was going to give him another chance, whereas Abby didn't have that with Owen. He's just gone.
Yeah, I love the follow up too, where they're on the island. Yara's killed, and then Abby kills her own WLF soldiers, and Lev's like, "Those are your people. Why'd you do that?" And she's like, "No, you're my people," because she even realizes after all they'd been through, like she can't go back to Owen and Mel after that conversation they had. Like she already knows, like they're done.
Yeah.
So even if they had lived, like it's not like they were going to be friends and hang out and go to Santa Barbara together. So that I love that just continuation of like Abby's actions and obsession cost her lives, cost her relationships, cost her joy. And then meeting Lev really does begin that redemption arc, and she realizes that after that confrontation with Owen and Mel, after the death of Isaac and those WLF soldiers, she's like, "It's you and me, Lev. Like we're in this to the end." Because really, they're both starting fresh together. Because Lev is the apostate of the Seraphites and is on this brand new journey toward freedom, trying to escape. Abby has nothing left with the WLF or even her own friends. So that works so well for me in the relationship, is that they're both starting anew and like seeking a better life together. So good, man. I love it. So
yeah,
liked it a lot. I thought Manny's kind of a fun guy. I mean,
I wish I had more time with him.
Yeah.
The few at the beginning, I was like, you're a little too much. But towards the end of that segment, I was growing to like him. And then the section with Tommy, I liked him a lot more in that segment. And then he just got brains his brains blown out the front of his head.
Mhm.
So I actually liked that. I don't understand this need for every character to go down in like a blaze of glory. Like I
Yeah, that's
like
too Hollywood
the
for me.
yeah, I like the realness of, even though like with Jesse and Manny, it's just like they're dead, they just die. Like
Hmm.
it's just, it is what it is.
Yep.
It's just,
And
I
that
don't know,
works for
I
me
kind
because
of
they've
like that.
established a grounded, unforgiving world they live in. Now, in
Yeah.
a game like an Uncharted, for example, I would expect a mainline character to have a little more
Oh
of
yeah,
a.
if they killed off Nathan Drake like that, then yeah, I'd be pissed off because that
Yeah,
does not fit the tone of Uncharted whatsoever.
exactly. So
But it's
that's
like,
why it didn't bother me at all.
yeah, it's like, I mean, look at the first game with freaking Henry and Sam, how the way
Exactly.
that their thing comes to an end. Like
Mhm.
it's just stuff like that happens.
Yeah. So and then you think about it too. Same thing with. I know they didn't initially plan for Abby's father to be that surgeon, but then it works as well because you think about her dad just gets stabbed in the neck with a scalpel or flamethrowed or shot in the face, depending on how you kill him as Joel. But in their canon version, he's killed with a scalpel. He also died in a unglamorous fashion. Just Joel just like comes in there, kills him, it's done. So same thing for Abby. But I thought Manny was a lot of fun, and that's what I like about the opening scene is that you see all these people and just consider them all to be total evil people, and then you get to know each of them not as well as you get to know Abby, but you get to see the other side of them. You're like, oh, well, these are real people that have relationships and lives outside of this horrible thing they did. Like even what's his name, the guy in the scene where Ellie's captured after Shimmer dies and they get blown up, and Dina comes to save her.
Oh, Jason?
No,
No,
can't remember his name. You know who I'm talking about, though.
I do. Yeah,
Like even that guy when you meet him in the cafeteria, he's just playing Vita. He's like, "Oh, hey, what's up,
yeah,
Abby?" He's just like kicking it. It's
yeah.
like,
I mean,
so
I think a majority of the Wolf soldiers were probably fine. I mean, they didn't. I think during that scene as well, when he was that commander guy was even going to kill Ellie, he's like, "Whoa, well, what are you doing?" He's like, "Well, man, Isaac just told us
like
with
to kill
everything going
everyone on
on,
sight.
we're killing everybody." He's like, "Whoa, like that's insane! Like that was just a new order that had just
Hmm.
been passed down. Like Isaac was just, I guess, in just the war going on with the Seraphites, he was just ready to end it." And
Hmm.
just kind of turned Wolf into just like a bunch of crazy people.
Yeah,
When
that's
they had built, I mean, it looks like they had a civilization there. They had freaking livestock,
hmm
cafeterias, gyms. Like they had a like lodging.
like crops and everything.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like they had,
a
they
fully
were like,
functional gym.
yeah. I mean, they had a like actual like thriving community and
It
stuff.
was very much Jackson in Seattle in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
I love that parallel as well. Um, Even the parallels, and not to go on a huge tangent, but like the aquarium and the museum, very
yeah,
similar. Of course, there's so many in there. I lose track because I've been thinking about the game so much, but a lot of parallels that are really cool. Another character I wanted to talk about. I think Jesse is awesome. He's such a cool guy. Like even at the right when you meet him, he's just, you can tell this
yeah,
guy's cool.
yeah.
And I like when you journey to the aquarium with him after you meet him. You get to know a little bit more of his backstory and his upbringing, and you're like, wow, I'm getting to know this guy, and then boom, he's dead.
Yeah.
Which again works for me because that's the world they've established. Like I was sad to see him go, but it's very similar to how you kind of get to know man. You're like, I think I'd like to get to know this guy even more. Boom, he's dead, and it's all repercussions of the actions both Ellie and Abby have committed.
Yeah.
So
Did you see Druckmann's tweet about JJ's name?
yeah,
'Cause
I assumed initially, even when I first saw it, that it's Jesse and Joel,
yeah,
right?
I did too, but I think that they tried to just want you to think that was like Jesse Jr. or
Oh,
something like that. So
it
I
reminded me,
do
what's
think
that game that they do something similar with initials?
BioShock.
Is it BioShock or am I thinking Uncharted? Like they do almost a similar thing with initials. I can't
I know
remember.
they have like AD on the false shepherd's hand in BioShock.
Yeah, something like that.
That's the only thing I can think of.
Mm-hmm. Um, any other characters we're overlooking?
Yeah,
We talked
Alice.
about Tommy, Alice. Yeah.
Alice, man. That I hated killing the dog anyways.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it was what it was. I mean, like, what else was Ellie supposed to do? That's why, I'm not going to get into it. But yeah. So you kill Alice, and yeah, that's just another thing. I'm going to bring it up, just the critique about it, because I want to see how you feel about it. About like, I didn't feel. I've seen some critiques saying like the game is just like wagging its finger in your face, like like you killed Alice, you bad boy, and stuff. Like, I didn't feel like that at all. Like, Alice, I just took it for what it was. Like,
Yeah.
Alice was was with Owen and Mel, and Alice did what Alice was supposed to do. She was protecting them, and Ellie, in self-defense, killed Alice. And during the flashback, you saw that just Alice was a part of the team, and it just kind of gives context and just makes you feel a little bad. I didn't think it was like the camera zoomed in and was like, you see that dog right there? Yeah, you freaking killed it, you psycho. Like,
Mhm.
I didn't
I
feel
didn't
that
feel that
way
way
about
either.
it at all. At all.
It just
But
is further clarification that there's two sides to every story, and like you don't know
yeah.
everyone's story. Just like what's fascinating is that Ellie and Abby have no idea what each has been through, but as the player, you're fully aware. But they
Yeah.
have no
And
clue.
isn't that weird that they never know?
Yeah.
Like, they never know. Even at the very end, like, Abby and Ellie have seen each other 3 times, and they've exchanged what, like, a couple of words?
I don't even think Ellie
Not
knows that
even?
Joel killed her father. I think Ellie just assumes that Abby's pissed
Yeah, I
that she
guess.
got away or something.
I guess. Yeah.
So
Yeah, they literally know nothing about each other. It's like you have to remind yourself, because you've played so long as both of them, and you, like, know both of their stories
and Abby has no
so
idea that
well.
Ellie was like a daughter to Joel. She has no
Yeah.
idea. Aside from just he taking her out of the hospital,
Yeah.
he doesn't know the journey they've been on together or their
Yeah.
history.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, in terms of characters,
How'd you feel about let's just briefly compare like Isaac to the former Seraphite prophet lady who you never meet. Like the
yeah.
letters you pick up and read about each of them are pretty interesting.
Yeah. I would like to know more about the uh Seraphite prophet.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think there's, like, obviously conflicting things. Like, Abby had heard that she had started a bunch of, like, bombings and or things. I think she made that comment to Lev, whereas of course Lev is saying like, "Oh, you should read our books." She was very kind and loving, so it's probably somewhere in the middle there. So I definitely would like to know probably more about her. Isaac I was actually very disappointed in Isaac. I think they built him up a lot, just kind of like you hear about him a lot, and then you finally meet him and he comes out and I'm like, oh, here we go. Like, this
Yeah.
guy, looks like he's seen a lot of stuff. And then he's like in the game for 10 minutes. And
He's
then
very
Yara
one note.
just,
Very one note.
yeah. Then Yara just takes him out like
Mm-hmm.
super fast. I'm like, oh, okay. I guess that's over.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely he's probably the most disappointing character in the game for me, because we just know nothing about him, and for him to be like,
I mean, like
apparently,
what is his motivation for just dealing with the Seraphites other than just
yeah,
like wanting their territory?
yeah, exactly. I'd like more context on that. I know they've had like a peace treaty and stuff, but I'd like to know more of why they had so much beef with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I do know by listening to some interviews, I forget if it was with Druckmann or whatever, but they originally had it to where Isaac was Abby's dad's best friend, which is how Abby even got involved with the wolves. And like,
Yeah, I think he said
was,
that is canon. They just don't explain it in the game.
gosh, well, I think they should have, because if
Yeah.
you don't play the game, then obviously, I mean,
Like-
even with that context, I still don't hardly know anything about Isaac. So if you don't know that, then you really don't know anything about him.
Yeah, it clarifies further as to why Owen and Abby You can even tell in the flashbacks Owen's not totally stoked to be a wolf. He's just kind of like, well, we have no other choice at this point. Because if Isaac
Yeah,
did take them in, as Neil explains, they were former Fireflies with these noble intentions. They were imperfect, of course, but noble intentions to cure humanity of this disease. And I know there's a whole like discussion you can have about, oh, they could have weaponized her. They could have become like they could have been becoming like tyrannical in a way where they control it, who can and who can't have it. So they had noble intentions, and then they go to the wolves, who would just or have this war with the Seraphites. Um, so it's interesting how they transition from Firefly to Wolf, and you can tell the whole time, especially and Abby's kind of. I mean, she probably isn't. You can kind of tell she's not totally stoked to be there either, but it gives her opportunity to train and prepare for this encounter with Joel. Meanwhile,
yeah,
Owen kind of always has his sights set elsewhere, and that culminates in him discovering that the Fireflies may or may not be in Santa Barbara. I've got to check it out and leave all
yeah.
this behind. So I think that was pretty cool. But yeah, Isaac's pretty one note. He's just a very generic villain in the story. Cool performance from I can't remember his name, Jeffrey something. He's playing Commissioner Gordon in the new Batman movie. He's in Westworld. I like him as an actor, but yeah, very one note. But I thought it was interesting about the prophet lady that you never meet her. I thought that was pretty cool. But you see her murals everywhere. You read a lot of
Isn't
different
she
letters about
dead?
her. Yeah, she's
She
dead.
did. Okay.
I think Lev kind of reveals that when you go to the village, like, oh, she's been gone, and like the fighting didn't start, the killing didn't start until after
Yeah,
she
until
died.
she was gone. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I thought one of the coolest letters I read about her is that at one point she was imprisoned by Isaac, and they said she just sat in her cell like smiling about it the entire time. I thought that was kind of
Yeah.
cool. But I thought that was cool too. It was just very restrained type of storytelling. Like you don't have to get all the details about every single person and single thing going on. I like how some of it's left open to your imagination and interpretation. It's just more engaging and more interesting to me to like think, not all of it, of course, but to think about some of it yourself and imagine what may or may not have happened is fun.
Yeah.
So I like that. Character wise, anything I'm leaving out? Why don't we talk about Dina for a few minutes before we go to gameplay?
I completely forgot about Dina.
Yeah, how do you feel about Dina?
I liked Dina. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like there could have been a little more time with her because the only time you're really with her is when you first get to Seattle, and then, of
Yeah,
course she's
she pretty
pregnant.
much just checks out like
Yeah,
a couple hours into the game.
and it's like I completely understand that Ellie, that they have a relationship before because you essentially see them at the start of their relationship, and of course they have their entire journey to Seattle, which takes a lot of time to even get there. So they were with each other that entire time, but they're still at kind of like in
And
the
they're
early
also friends
stages.
before they sort of started like
Exactly.
dating or whatever.
Exactly. So it's like it makes complete sense of they probably had this like hidden love for each other like this entire time, and Ellie, had another girlfriend, and Dina had been dating Jesse, and it probably was just like this, crush that they had both had on each other. But we kind of just like have to assume that, and we were, like I said, we only were really like fully with her the first like not even quarter of the game. So I feel like for me to have felt more for Dina, I needed to spend more time with her. But from the parts that she was in, like I liked her. I thought her and Ellie had good chemistry. I just she probably would have had a bigger impact on me if we had seen more of her. But like I don't really know if that's not really her character, or like her and Ellie's relationship aren't really like the main things from this story that I even like you know like reflect on when I think about this game. I kind of think it's
Yeah.
just like just there.
I think Dina's a little more than a plot device. I can see how someone could argue that she's just there to show the effects that Ellie's actions are having on other people around her, specifically a really
Yeah.
close relationship. But I think Dina's characterized enough, especially in the open segment of Seattle, where you're getting more of her story and she's explaining more of her past and those conversations they have. I feel like that's the bulk of where you get to know Dina.
Yeah. And I like her the part in the synagogue where she talks about, her
Hmm.
Jewish heritage and stuff. I thought that part was interesting. I enjoyed the um crap, I'm totally blanking. Oh, the take on me part. I thought that was one of my favorite parts at the beginning of the game, just
Hmm.
showing them just chilling there. So there are definitely moments I would have loved like one more segment of the game like that with her and Ellie.
Yeah.
I think that could have maybe done it a little better for me.
What's there's another part of that sequence where she talks about how her family like narrowly escaped. I think they came from New Mexico, if I'm not mistaken. Something like that.
I think so.
That how they barely escaped. She talked about sort of the tragedy that transpired in her hometown. Deepens her a bit more as well. Uh, but yeah, I mean, Dina was certainly not one of my. I really enjoyed her character, but she's probably on like the bottom of my scale of like my favorite characters in the game. But
Yeah,
I by no means disliked her, but I would have liked a little more from that relationship as well, personally. Um, and you get a fair amount too when they're on their run at the beginning. I know they're mostly flirting and talking about like the present events, but you get a strong sense of her personality during that initial run.
for sure.
So I don't, unless we're just losing our minds, I don't think we're leaving out any major characters. I mean, do you want to talk about Joel anymore? Like the way he's presented in this game, where he's at emotionally, or do you feel pretty good about how we've talked about Joel?
I mean, I feel pretty good about what I said. Like I
Hmm.
love Joel. And um yeah, I don't I really
Yeah,
don't. I think I really said as much as I
let,
can say about him.
before we talk about gameplay, then let's just briefly talk about how much we appreciate the performances in this game and what went into them is just insane. And it still blows my mind every time I see Troy Baker on camera, like on a podcast. I'm like, he is completely different from Joel. Like I know, like as an actor, that's to be expected, but physically, his voice and the way he like his mannerisms as Joel, like everything about Joel is like complete opposite of who Troy Baker is in real life. And because it's one thing when I mean, Troy Baker in general is very talented, but for example, when he's Sam in The Last of Us, you're like, oh, that's Troy Baker talking. Like it's a fun personality, cool, great character. But then when he's Joel, he really is a completely different person, which just blows my mind. I completely forget it's Troy Baker when he's playing Joel. Um, and on top of that, I thought Abby's performance was nuanced and complex, like I've mentioned, and just very relatable. And I was just blown away. I mean, I say this in my video too. I've always known Laura Bailey's insanely talented, but this was the first Laura Bailey role. I was like, she is so gifted. It's insane.
Yeah.
Um, Especially listening into more context with interviews she's done, specifically with Kind of Funny, which I didn't even think about this. I know like Red Dead 2, for example, they worked on the game for 8 years, and all those actors worked on the game for virtually the same amount of time. But the fact that they filmed and performed this game over a period of 5 years is
It's nuts.
absolutely mind blowing. Blew my mind to hear that. So hats off to the performances, man. Across the board, I thought everyone was excellent. Even Isaac, one note, like the actor, but Tommy as well. He is insanely gifted. The guy who plays Tommy is insanely gifted.
Yeah,
So I would like to see a little more of Tommy too, if we can get it somehow. But yeah, everyone killed it. So
for sure.
yeah, characters, story, we dig. I guess we'll talk. I mean, any story points that you want to talk about? You just straight up didn't like before we move to gameplay. Like the only one that I still am like hung up on is like the Nora interrogation and Ellie's reaction, but it
Yeah,
isn't it isn't
I
all
can
that
see
bad.
that, but it's like I just contribute to that like it's a game. Like there's the I understand like in this type of game like where it's so cinematic and it is so grounded how we'll like say that and then on the other hand I'll be like, "Oh, well like there has to be gameplay of you killing people. Like I can't have it both ways." So I definitely like agree with you. But I'll kind of let the gameplay affecting the story thing. I'll let it slide just a little bit because it's just like gameplay. And I mean, if you played stealthy the entire way, like and not killing as few people as possible, then I guess it could technically make more sense
Yeah, I
at
say
that
that in my
part.
video because thematically and story wise, it makes total sense. But then when you plays, I mean, I played very conservatively, but I did kill most people just very stealthily. But you see like stealth
Yeah,
gamer play like John Wick, and then
yeah,
imagine that scene immediately after. It's kind of funny. When I first experienced that scene, I just thought it was kind of funny. I didn't think it was bad by any means. I'm like, this is just kind of hilarious. I just slaughtered a whole hospital full of people, like
Yeah.
very viscerally, and reluctantly put down a few dogs in the process. And now I'm like upset because I chased a woman through a hospital and beat her with a stick or like a pipe. So I'm like, okay. But again, like the only explanation I think thematically is that she's been on this warpath and it all kind of culminates in her realizing and I love the parallel too, where you see Ellie's like pissed off, like hateful expression, the same one Joel had before he killed Abby's father. And just in general, just kind of Joel's backstory a bit, where he's been that visceral, unforgiving killer, and you've even seen some of it. And Ellie, throughout the game, becomes more and more and more like Joel because he's kind of instilled these characteristics in her because she's been with him for so long. And I love too just not really the parallel, but the symbolism of playing Future Days and just the guitar in general. It's like the whole game when she picks up a guitar, it's like Joel's still with her, clearly, like emotionally, and his memory is still with her. And progressively, as she plays the guitar throughout the game, it gets more and more somber. Like you start with, even before she plays "Take on Me," she's playing through Future Days. Dina's like, "What's that?" And she's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's nothing." And she's like, "Oh, well, nothing sounds pretty good." And like throughout the game, as she plays that, it's more emotional each time she plays it, and that's why I think it hits so hard at the end when she physically can't even play it anymore. It's just so powerful. Sorry, I almost forgot about that. I'm glad I mentioned it because that really stuck out to me as well. So, but then you can pick up guitar and play "Nothing Else Matters" by Metallica, or just play "Through the Fire and Flames" as well. But the cut scene,
That's how it should have ended.
Yeah, the cut scenes of guitar, yeah, just shred like a Slipknot song on guitar and then walk away. But the cut scene guitar sequences play out dramatically like that. So
For sure.
Liked it a lot.
Yeah, and in terms of story, I think that's all I have to say. The thing that, like I said, sticks with me is that just closure with Joel for me was really powerful.
Yeah. I didn't know if you wanted to talk at all about Lev going to try to deal with his mom and winds up having to kill her because she tries to kill him.
Yeah, that is fine.
Yeah. Yeah, because I can understand people's confusion as to like, why does this even matter? Like, I don't think it really matters in terms of like the overall story, but it's a part of Abby's journey and this journey to redemption where you clearly see how much she cares for Lev and that she's willing to chase after him when he's going to do something just as stupid as Ellie's been doing the whole game, like going to deal with something he should just let go.
Yeah.
But she goes to help him because like she says, "You're my people." Like she recognizes she has to care for him. So, yeah, it worked for me. I mean, I thought that was really sad too, where she finds him like, dang, like he had to kill his own mom. That was like really sad. And then Yara is killed almost immediately after that.
Yeah, that sucked more to me, that part, than Lev.
Especially after everything you do for Yara and then you get to know Yara a bit too when you're on that adventure to go find Lev. You get to know her pretty well.
Like at least through all she's been through, at least she goes out like a badass.
Oh, totally. Yeah, she had a pretty heroic death.
Yeah,
for sure. So, yeah, I liked it a lot, man. Really, really like it. You want to talk about gameplay then?
Sure.
Cool.
I don't know what else to really say gameplay wise. I guess one of my main critiques from the game probably is, like I said, gameplay. How I felt like it dragged on a little bit, and I'm not gonna lie. And I so I have this like debate where I believe the story and the gameplay kind of fight each other here, because I really would have preferred not having to completely start over as Abby, upgrading all the weapons, upgrading all the abilities and stuff. So when I think of that, I think, oh, well, maybe the game would have been better if you kind of go back and forth between Ellie and Abby. So you're kind of upgrading things at the beginning around the same time, so towards the middle of the game, you're kind of already have an established character that's, kind of upgraded in both Abby and Ellie. But I like the story more with it just cutting off halfway and then restarting. So I know you couldn't have done that gameplay wise. So yeah, I'm kind of conflicted there because I would have preferred the gameplay to have gone back and forth, but I still prefer the story. To, like I said, I'm just repeating exactly what I said, so I'm kind of conflicted there. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, I'm fine with them doing the story that way as opposed to mixing the gameplay up. But that is kind of was a little bit of a bummer when I got there. Because you spend so much time as Ellie upgrading and stuff, and like you're prone slower now, so like all the things
Hmm.
that you got accustomed to are just stripped from you as Abby. And I feel like Abby wasn't didn't play as different as she could have. I know there are a few skills that emphasize her combat ability to where if you do like a finishing blow, your next attack will be an automatic finisher. Dude, I used that like once ever.
Yeah, same.
Especially playing on Survivor the first time through. It's like if I killed anybody through melee, I had to run as fast as I could and like dive behind something or else I was done for. Like there was no melee attacking another enemy because they were either gonna shoot me point blank or
Yeah.
if it was there would be like a clicker next to me or something. And I'm just running away. So I think they could have maybe done a little more, maybe made Abby a little more powerful than she was to be more aggressive, or maybe took out a lot of. I know. I feel like they kind of tried to de-emphasize stealth with Abby, but
Hmm.
it was still an effective tactic, so I just still used it.
Same. Yeah. I think that's why, especially in moderate, like you said, it dragged on for me as well and became very repetitive because I played as Abby more or less the exact same way I played as Ellie. And I
Yeah.
also kind of had that initial gut reaction where you realize that, oh crap, there's a skill tree and everything. It's like I didn't. I think I'm about to play as Abby for a while, and especially the more you find manuals to upgrade to unlock more skill trees, it's like holy crap, this is more than I
Like,
thought it
oh,
was going to be.
there's another one I can find.
Yeah,
Like every time I picked up one, I thought that.
yeah. I was like, oh dang. And like, yes, the weapons are different, but they're not that different. I know she has the semi-auto rifle, and the crossbow is pretty cool. She has the double barrel shotgun versus the pump action, but they're more or less the same weapons for the most
Dude,
part.
I love that hunting pistol.
Oh, that thing's sick.
That
Yeah.
thing was awesome.
That is like the big standout
Flamethrower
for her.
too.
Oh, I forgot
Flamethrower.
about the flamethrower. I
Yeah.
almost entirely, oddly enough, I almost always forget about the boss fight in the hospital.
Oh yeah, that's the like only thing in the game I just used all my flamethrower on.
Yep.
The
Yep.
Rat King, I think they call him.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was one of the most intense boss fights I have had. Like
Yeah, that was pretty horrifying and stressful.
horrifying, just like running for my life, and then I think I've killed it, and that stupid stalker thing crawls
Yeah.
out of it, and I was like,
Hmm.
absolutely not.
Yeah. Yeah, there were only two parts of the game that really felt like a video game to me. Um, Well, they're also, I mean, some of the like the truck chase with Jesse feels like a video game because you have infinite ammo out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I don't fault it for that, but that feels like a game. But the two parts that really felt like a video game to me, which I can't complain about because it is a video game and like I want some fun sequences, but the boss fight very much felt like a video game to me, even more so than like the bloater fight in the arcade. And also the entire island sequence with Abby going after Lev. Story wise, I really enjoyed it, but gameplay, it felt so much like a game to me. And all of those sequences where you can either fight your way through guns blazing or go in with stealth all felt like the arenas that you traverse felt very much like a game to me. They're also the areas that cheese the most. By the way, you've been frozen forever, and I have no idea if you're still here. There you are. Okay.
I'm here. Oh
Okay.
no, I think I was just looking down.
Okay. I also heard a lot of glitching going on, so I couldn't tell if you were frozen or not.
Oh
But
gosh, no, I'm here.
yeah, those areas felt very gamey to me, and those were the areas I cheesed the most on moderate, where I would just bow a guy and 6 people would come investigate, and I just kill the rest investigating his body. That's when I got really annoyed with some of the gameplay. But Survivor alleviated that. Those are the only sequences where I was like, this is definitely a video game right now. But everything else felt pretty immersive. So yeah, I wasn't totally thrilled about restarting my skill tree either, but I really enjoyed playing as Abby, and I think in my second playthrough, when I get to that point, I will intentionally be, I think even as Ellie, my second playthrough, I'll be guns blazing as often as I can, albeit on Survivor, just to make it different. But yeah, it did drag for me a bit too. And even all the new mechanics they described in those state of plays that I was already kind of not worried about, but wasn't thrilled about. It's like, oh, you can go prone now, you can jump, There's more verticality, stuff like that. There's the dogs and the rope swinging. Like, wasn't all that innovative, but I enjoyed some of the
Dude,
sequences they
I
implemented it in.
loved the rope puzzles. I thought they got rid of those way too early. Just the actual physics of the rope, just
Yeah.
how insane they were. And have you seen videos of people like wrapping stuff, like just doing crazy stuff with them?
Uh-huh.
It's like mind blowing that they probably spent how many man hours making these ropes, like the most realistic ropes ever. And
Yeah.
then there's like 3 puzzles with them.
Yeah.
Like I would have loved to have had, you know, more puzzles revolved around those.
Yeah, the one I always remember is on Seattle Day 2, I think, when you're headed towards the hospital and you go into that
Uh-huh.
that side building. We have to throw it over the railing to get into that extra
Yes.
area.
Yeah, it's
That
like
one's
that
pretty
was
cool.
not that didn't feel video gamey to me. That was like, how would I do this? Like,
Yeah.
what around here would I throw that? Because it's like, oh, here's a yellow bar.
Hmm.
You got to throw it over this bar that's right here. It's like, no, like I got to break the glass and like this little V right here where the glass sits. I'm going to aim for that. Like
Mhm.
it felt super real.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So,
like those puzzles too. I mean, they're not anything that are overly complex, but I like how you're having to
yeah.
use your intuition a bit and to figure it out on your own. It is kind of like a little celebratory moment. You're like, oh, I figured that
Yeah.
out,
Or
even if it isn't
especially
super complex.
in that same exact segment, I loved the puzzle where you have to get the garbage can outside, but you're only one person and the door comes down. So you have to put it at the top of that hill to roll it
Yeah,
and
yeah.
pull it out. Like I thought that was just a really, of course it's not, you don't have to be freaking Einstein to figure it out, but
Hmm.
I thought it was creative enough to like make you feel a little smart after figuring it out. Even Ellie makes a comment like oh yeah, like I'm so smart or something like that
Yeah.
after it. So um
No, I
yeah,
can't believe that
I've
worked.
yeah, I for the most part really enjoyed the environmental puzzles in this game. I feel like they were kind of front loaded though. I feel like
Yeah, it feels
they
like the more you
really
progress, the less they show up.
yeah, I feel like they really didn't want things to overstay their welcome. Like the generator stuff,
Hmm.
it's like they kind of introduced them in the beginning of the game where typically like in a normal game, those would be like way throughout the game, but you kind of like again at the beginning of the game kind of get through them. Same thing with the puzzles, you kind of get through them. So I wonder if that was Ellie's stuff. They wanted it to be more environmentally environmentally or more like in like traversal base, like through the environments, doing puzzles and stuff. And maybe Abby, since we play the last half of the game as Abby, that's primarily like combat focused. Maybe that was
And
the
she kind
point.
of had one. I remember when you're in that warehouse with Mel and you're like climbing up onto that plane or whatever it is, or that
Yeah, yeah,
rafter, and you
yeah.
throw the rope over to swing. There's like some of that stuff
Okay.
with Abby.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that.
Um, yeah, there's a couple. It's funny. I remember the least about like the intricacies of Abby's playthrough, aside from just the combat sequences and a lot of the story beats.
Hmm.
I think it's because I've already played through the game 1.5 times, mostly as Ellie. But I'll be interested to think more about that when I get to the Abby sequences. But trying to think of any specific aspects of gameplay. Oh yeah, the open world segment I liked, but my second playthrough I liked less than I did originally. And it isn't. I don't dislike it in the sense of like this sucks. It's just kind of like I know I can't progress the game until I get through this open segment. And if you know where everything is, I could blow through it in 5 seconds easily.
Yeah.
But on Survivor, you want to collect every little thing you can. So of course I'm playing through every single place again to find all the supplies.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a drag for me the second time, but initially I did like that sequence. I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping there would be
At least one
another one of
more.
those.
It'd be cool if
Yeah.
like Abby had a section like that.
Yeah, definitely. And I know the
So,
original pitch of the game was supposed to probably be more like that.
mhm.
Um,
Which you and I talked about, whether it's a Lost Legacy type game or some form of DLC. They talked about in an interview with Neil and Haley. I think it was, or is it Hallie? I keep forgetting your name. Is it
I
Haley?
think it's Haley.
Okay. I think it was the Beyond interview where they said initially it was a little more open world. And I think Jonathan Dornbush asked, well, is it still, can you still imagine like an open world setting in the Last of Us world? And they said, absolutely. We actually, some of our designers have already come up with concepts that could work. I think it'd be cool to have a Lost Legacy type game, very similar. We're in a big open hub world. And whether you're playing as Joel and Tommy or other characters, to explore what Last of Us could look like in an open world setting. I mean,
Yeah.
I think even aspects of that, like I know we won't go on a tangent, but like we've talked about our ideas for multiplayer, aside from just the traditional factions experience from the first game, like what they could do to experiment with a wide open space and more of like battle royale elements in Last of Us multiplayer could be kind of cool. But that's a discussion for some other time. But
Yeah.
what about just in general, like gunplay, stealth? How'd you feel about it?
Um, I thought the stealth was satisfying. Uh, I played on Survivor my first playthrough, and it was actually really hard to play super stealthy because you got noticed so fast. So definitely felt more powerful on moderate, being able to actually do like consecutive stealth kills, playing on that difficulty. But I thought it was, satisfying. I thought prone really um, allowed you to do that, like actually sneak through areas without even touching anybody. The ability to go prone made that an actual possibility. So that was fun. In terms of the gunplay, I thought it was good. Um, I I
Certainly satisfying.
It's better than Days Gone. I think, like I said on the podcast, but it's not as good as Uncharted.
Hmm.
It's kind of like in the middle there, but I think they kind of want it to feel a little weighty.
Hmm.
Um, so because they can do it, like they've made Uncharted, they can make it feel extremely responsive and smooth. So I think it's obviously deliberate that they make it feel the way that it feels in this game. But I personally would like it to feel exactly like Uncharted, so I can save ammo better by just consecutively getting headshots and stuff.
Hmm.
But for what it is, I think it fits the tone of the game and stuff, the way that the characters move and aiming and stuff.
Dude, one thing I'd like to analyze, I don't know if they went into this level of detail, but I wonder if the way Ellie controls a handgun feels a bit smoother than the way she controls the rifle, because obviously the rifle is much heavier than a handgun. And I wonder if Abby's with her physical strength, if her holding that semi-auto rifle in comparison to Ellie holding her bolt action, if they feel different based on their physicality. That'd be really interesting.
I don't know. That is a interesting
I imagine like that's not
thought.
necessary in gameplay. Like they'd probably just have like
I mean, that sounds like something Naughty Dog would do.
just
To
based on
like,
the other detail in the game. You think
yeah,
why stop here, go all in.
yeah,
It'd be interesting to do a comparison like that. And one thing I wanted to say about story real quick is it's inevitable. I think that someone's going to cut together scenes from the first game with scenes from this game involving Abby and Ellie, and like how they kind of tell it out of order. Someone's going to
yeah,
cut it into like sequential order just for fun. It'll be kind of interesting to see it play out that way, like Ellie's death and immediately showing Abby's response, and then all the
yeah,
flashbacks building up in sequential order. It'd be kind of interesting to experience the story that way.
yeah, for sure.
Anyway, gunplay I also grew to really like as well. Like we said, it does feel repetitive at points. It drags on for a while. I will say by the end of the game, dude, I was so over infected stealth sequences, man. I got so tired of those. Because I mean, if I'm going to play stealth, I'd much rather fight humans than
Yeah,
infected. Now there are certainly sequences I love, like you mentioned, the descent through the hotel is easily one of my favorite sequences as well, and it involves infected. But after a while, I got pretty tired of the infected stuff. But I think some of my favorite sequences, especially if you're playing stealthily, like I know you and I like to play, the mix of humans and infected and how you can, and unfortunately, it's pretty limited, like those encounters. I mean, there's
yeah,
some that you can kind of force. I think the obvious ones are when you're in the subway. Another one's when you're in the hospital as Ellie. So there's a few that are kind of like forced upon you, but there's one initially when you first leave the school. And I found out through Stealth Gamer, like those infected that are nearby that gas station where the
yeah,
WF kind of stumble upon you. If you like open that door and get their attention, I made them all fight each other in Survivor.
yeah.
And it was
I did that on
awesome.
accident.
And it was so cool
Yeah,
because while they're fighting, some other WLF guy's like hiding behind something, and I just sneak up on him and take him down while his friends are like overkilling the infected. And at the end of that fight, only one guy was left alive, and like the infected were dead, all the WLF guys were dead, and he was like freaking out. And I snuck up on that guy and got him. But it's just a really cool way to, because you can really get creative with the gameplay. And I was unaware of this because, like I said, I played very conservatively. And then when I watch people like Stealth Gamer play, I'm like, holy crap, look what you can do in this game.
yeah.
So
It's
it is
pretty
pretty cool.
nuts. I did like at the end when you're fighting the rattlers, they have some infected caged up on chain,
Yeah.
or not caged up, chained up, and you can undo the chains and kind of let them run loose.
So
So
it's like little tidbits like that that help me appreciate Santa Barbara a little more. Is because like, while
yeah,
yes, it feels a little extensive, little aspects like that freshen it up a bit. And of
for
course, you
sure.
get the SMG at the end
SMG.
too,
Yeah,
so it helps.
for sure.
I'm trying to think of any other gameplay sequences I either loved or just didn't like as much. Jacob talked about this, one of my favorite moments. I mean, on two separate occasions, I wasn't physically attacked one of the times, but the time when you're in Seattle, day two, up in that condo or whatever, you're at the table and they
Oh,
run up behind you.
I put down 2 trip mines my second playthrough
They
because we
blow up.
talked about it. They all blowed up.
That is,
They all blowed up.
they all blowed up, dude. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, just body parts everywhere.
That's so good, dude.
Yeah.
That stealth gamer video I sent you. There's this one sequence where he's about to jump out of a window and he knows someone's about to chase him out and he puts a bomb right at the edge of the window, jumps out, and when he lands on the ground, you hear the bomb go off and body parts just fly over his head all in front of him, and he keeps running. It's awesome.
Nice.
But yeah, I love that moment. The first time I experienced that was actually that part we were just talking about. After you leave the school, I'm at the workbench in the gas station, and then I hear voices coming. And it wasn't scripted to the point where it's like, oh, cutscene, time to get out of the workbench. I physically was like, oh crap, and like turned the workbench off and like ran off and hid somewhere. But that was like the first experience I had like that, where it felt a little more dynamic. I loved, especially your first playthrough. I mean, once you play through and know where everything is, it's not as exciting. But initially, when you go to explore the bank, for example, in the open part of Seattle, and you find the shotgun, like that's an
Yeah.
awesome discovery. You're like, okay, I went out of my way off the beaten path, and I was rewarded for it. Love stuff like that. I know there's a few moments in this game that just were so awesome to me, gameplay wise. I don't know. I can't think of them off the top of my head because it is just a big game, but I liked it a lot.
For
So,
sure.
Certainly not perfect, but definitely enjoyed it. What's something else we can talk about real quick? We talked about gameplay, talked about story. Oh yeah, of course. Let's talk about music, presentation, sound design, and we'll probably call it there. I know it's easy to be like, oh, it's amazing. Like intricacies you love about either the visual presentation, the audio, the music.
The music actually, I didn't even notice it.
There were a few times
Honestly.
I noticed it. Whenever it swelled up like a like an acoustic guitar, like moments like that, I noticed.
I know I had to turn my subs down big time. Freaking was like insane at some points.
Yeah.
It's like shaking the walls. So that I noticed that for sure. But I mean, I think the only thing I really say presentation wise is just like graphically, it's just, and of course everybody on Earth has said it. It's just phenomenal. Naughty Dog is just in a league of their own with this stuff. When it comes to just like the acting and the just graphical presentation of everything, just like the little details from like the dirt under the fingertips to how Abby holds her gun,
The facial
just like
expressions.
the correct way, all of that stuff. It's the best there is right now in gaming.
The lighting too is just absolutely stunning. It's so
Yeah.
beautiful.
So I'm just like, every time I play a Naughty Dog game, I'm so impressed by it, but it's always like I just won't like, oh, I always go to like, oh well, what's the next thing? Like, what are they gonna do next? Like, this is absolutely phenomenal, but like, man, how can they do this better? And I know that sounds like I don't appreciate the 7 years of work they put into this. I 100% do, but it's just like they're so good that it just, and they consistently like one up themselves with the presentation aspects, that I just always wonder like, man, how can this get any better? So I'm really excited to see what they can do with next gen hardware. So
Yeah, same. I think one of my favorite details is just whenever it's raining, especially, but in particular with Abby, when she has her tank top on and the water like running down her arms when it's like reflecting off the lighting is just unbelievably beautiful how realistic it looks. Sound design too. I mean, the gunshots I love how they intentionally make super intense. Like every time you fire a gun, it's like a bomb's going off. So it just makes firefights that much more intense. Really appreciate that. Of course, the ambient sound design with nature and being in Seattle and a forest or the interior of a building, whether it's eerie or beautiful, is really effective. Um, and of course, as we said, the presentations are tremendous. But yeah, total package, man. I think I've gone back and forth between 8.5 and 9. I think I'd land on a 9 just because some of the gameplay aspects didn't work for me always, but for the most part, I did enjoy them, especially like I've said 100 times on a harder difficulty.
Yeah.
Um, but I said even on moderate, especially moderate, the AI from time to time was very very dumb. But Survivor, they feel way more realistic. So
Yeah, for
um,
sure.
yeah. But overall, man, I applaud Naughty Dog. I know not everyone feels the same, and I don't. I know you and I both don't fault anyone for the way they feel, but you and I clearly very liked it. And I understand for listeners too, it can be kind of boring if two people like just wholeheartedly agree on a game. Preston and I have some differences the way we feel about it, but more or less we really enjoyed it. And I think what Naughty Dog did, everyone, a lot of people said this is it was very daring, it was very bold, and I know that for a lot of people it didn't work, and I don't fault them for that. But for me, it really was effective, and I love the bold approach they took. And I think long term, uh, if they had done it a different way, like a simpler, safer way, it wouldn't have been nearly as satisfying as this will be, especially in the long run.
Yeah, I have a feeling, could be dead wrong, come back to this video and laugh at how stupid I was, but I think this game is going to age very well. I think in a few years, people might be thinking back on this game and like I can already see videos like
I was
maybe
wrong about The Last of
I was a
Us.
little wrong about this. Of course, I could blow up in my face, but I do definitely think this is a game that like as you kind of you know sit on it, it kind of gets better as you think about it because it is so just like intense the first time through, and there are just so many emotions and things, and I do think that leaks did 100% affect some people's feelings about this game from the get-go. I
Mhm.
mean, there are some people like I'm not calling out anybody whatsoever, but they were going to hate this game no matter what. And I even said this during our leak discussion of the podcast that like their minds were made up, and I do think it's not coincidental at all that like all these people that I saw were super vocal about how the leaks were the worst thing on earth. Every single one of them 100% all hate this game with an undying passion. Like I think that's
Mhm.
just a little too coincidental. So if there is a guy that completely did 180 like that, I'd like to know who they are. But yeah, in terms of that, I do think later on people will probably think more differently about this game. So
Mhm.
so yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else to cover. I'm gonna be so mad at myself if I'm editing this. I'm just like, crap, I forgot to talk about this one thing. um, Let me pull up one more thing I have on my phone. I took a few notes while I was prepping to make videos for this, and there might be something on my list that I forgot about as like a honorable mention before we close. Last of Us Part Two. A little Easter eggs. I appreciated the Uncharted game and Jack and Daxter, I think it was, and all the
No,
PS3s throughout the game.
you can't shoot the PS3s. The reticule would turn gray over them.
Oh, what it?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, I appreciated those aspects. Those were cool. I said my notes for cool moments were using your intuition. Like we talked about the puzzles. I talked about WLS stumbling upon me at a workbench. The guy, and you noticed this too when I was watching you play. That I shot a guy in the legs once, and your guy was like, "Hey, come over here. Like, I want to talk to
Yeah.
you." But my guy was like, I shot him in the legs. He's like, "Man, you really effed me up," and he was so upset about it. He's like, "Why would you do this?" Before I killed him, I took a note of that. Cool details. I wrote that Ellie's arms get dirty after going prone. Rain audio near cars and buses changes is cool. The guys that gargle when you shoot them in the neck is pretty intense. Abby reacting to fear of heights, even unscripted moments, like if you get too close to a high edge and turn the
Yeah.
camera around, she's like panicking about being near the edge. It's
The
pretty cool.
camera will kind of like go
Kind of,
enclosed as well.
yeah, it's really interesting. I thought it was cool. I didn't notice this. The gas canister you pick up in the downtown part of Seattle when you go to get gas, like the nozzle sticks out of Ellie's backpack. I didn't notice that.
I noticed that too.
I liked the one less round in the clip after you upgrade a weapon or work on it. Like it goes back into your inventory, but there's one less in the clip of the gun. It's pretty cool. reflections in water and blood. Did you notice these?
Reflections of water in blood. What do you mean?
Or reflections in like blood puddles and water puddles,
Oh,
where
okay.
it wasn't just like a random rendered image. It literally was the reflection of like whatever angle you stand at of like the space you're in.
Oh, wow.
Mind blowing. It's incredible. Another amazing detail are blood puddles in particular. For example, I have screenshots of this because it was so impressive. A guy died right near a puddle of water, and his blood puddle was totally like a normal blood puddle, like nearby his body, but it seeped into water and dissipated as it went into water. Thought that was fascinating, like little things like that. So even like the details of blood puddles will change depending on the environment they're in. So pretty cool details. Yeah, I think
For
that's my
sure.
whole list. Um, Combat details. Yeah, that's pretty much what I had as far as
Cool.
cool things. But I think that'll do it, man.
Yeah.
Any closing thoughts on Last of Us Part Two?
I really enjoyed it. Think it's going to stick with me for a while. I consistently think about the game and yeah, I'll be interested to see kind of as the game of the year discussion comes around, just how people are going to talk about this game, just just kind of how controversial that's going to be, and again, like I said, how one as people think about this game as time goes on, just how their feelings might change for the better or for the worse about this game when it comes to discussing that. So
Yeah, and we want to encourage everyone as well who's listening, whether you love the game, whether you hate the game, whether you kind of like the game. We want to hear your thoughts and generate conversation in the comments. And I know we've talked a bit about this on Discord. I mean, Preston and I haven't had like full on discussions on Discord yet. But I'm totally down to talk about it. And we don't want anyone to think that like, oh, our opinion's right and yours is wrong. That's not at all how we feel. Like I've seen some very fair negative reviews that critique things that like I understand why they feel that way completely. We just enjoy talking about it, and we encourage more discussion. Again, I know we understand we're late to the party on this, but we wanted to give Jacob a chance to finish the game, which unfortunately he couldn't do. So we look forward to eventually hearing his thoughts and the full perspective. But we hope you enjoyed our conversation, and we thank you for tuning in, and of course, encourage you to engage in discussion. But if you want any more content specifically that's sort of from us, I did 2 videos for COG. If you don't know already, I did one that's like a pitch on why you should try playing on Survivor, and another one where I kind of talk about my likes and gripes of the story in detail. And I made both videos in a way that's meant to be engaging and entertaining beyond just here's how I feel. The end. Like they have like funny moments throughout and stuff. So those videos are on COG's YouTube channel if you're interested. But I think we can finally, until Jacob shares his thoughts later on, put The Last of Us 2 to rest for a while and get to talking about other games coming out this year when we play them.
cool.
Cool. Well, again, ladies and gents, thank you so much for tuning in. Episode 238 of the It's Obvious podcast is available now on Spotify. I think I'm actually going to upload this before the podcast goes live, but if you're listening to this before or after 238 is out, and it's available on podcast services and on YouTube. And as always, we love you to bits and appreciate your support, and we'll talk to you again very soon.
Bye bye.